Main event of the evening.
These days are
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today we are discussing Season 9, Episode 10, Baby It's Cold Inside.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in Baby It's Cold Inside.
We open with Lori Beth on the phone with an airline to ask about their flights to Greenland.
No, this isn't a crank call. I really want to go there.
As she happily tells Marion and Joni when they come in from the cold, Richie's army base is opening for wives, and she's going to visit him. The plane leaves in an hour, so Lori Beth has some very quick packing to do. She asks Marion to look after Richie Jr., who is having his first cold and will be a little hard to handle.
Pretty little thing, let me like to count, cause mama, I'm so hard to handle now, yes around.
Howard and Potsy come in, and Howard reminds Potsy that he does not live here. He also tells Marion that he won 2 free tickets to New York.
Well, it seems like I ended up selling more happy plungers than anyone else.
Even Fonzie is getting in on the trip frenzy. He's going to Omaha as the Jefferson High delegate to a teachers' convention.
Omaha, sing out for Omaha, lift up your throat and shout hooray!
Everyone is very happy, until they remember the small matter of the baby.
The baby! Oh, that's right.
Marion offers to stay home, and Potsy offers to go to New York. Lori Beth says it's her baby, and Potsy offers to go to Greenland. Joni passive-aggressively remarks that she certainly can't do it, because she's basically still a baby, and she storms upstairs. After some discussion, Howard calls her down and asks her to take care of the baby this week. Joni happily accepts.
I'll bathe him, and I'll feed him, and I'll burp him. I'll even get him to grow some hair.
The next day, Howard and Marion are preparing to leave for New York, and Al is asking them to get him some bagels.
Well, I'm not going to have time for that. I'm going to be in business meetings all afternoon.
Afternoon's too late. You got to get there 5 o'clock in the morning. That's what Bertie takes. He takes him out of the oven.
Joni is home with Chachi, Jenny, and Richie Jr. As soon as Howard and Marion are gone, Jenny declares that it's party time, much to Joni's consternation. She's very invested in proving she can be a responsible adult, and she tells Jenny to uninvite all the people she invited.
Listen, Jenny, this weekend is very, very important to me, and I want to just prove to everyone that I'm just not a little kid. Well, I don't think you understand something, Joni. When kids' parents leave town, there's going to be a party.
Once they're alone, Joni remarks that with Chachi and the baby, it's just like they were married. She makes him go out and come in and pretend to be her husband. Chachi's idea of a husband is miserable and yelling.
Is that why I work like a dog? So you can lie around here like a queen stuffing your mouth with bonbons?
And Joni remarks that married people are happier than that. Then the boiler starts malfunctioning again. Then Jenny returns to explain that she tried to call everyone to cancel the party, but nobody was home. They're all already here. One partygoer, recurring character Bobby, tries to get everyone to take their clothes off to see who's fat. Jenny insists he's just joking.
Who'd take their clothes off if they were fat?
Chachi begins flirting with a girl from one of his classes, having just come in from failing to fix the boiler. Bobby tries to throw the coffee table and has to be stopped. And then Eugene and Melvin Belvin show up, much to everyone's disappointment.
It's Eugene and Melvin Belvin!
Joni and Chachi say the party can go on, but with some new rules that totally won't make it less fun. Moments later, everyone is sitting in silence, until Rudy the maintenance man shows up to fix the boiler.
Rudy to the rescue. Who died?
Having a party.
Do they know?
His price for fixing it is $199.95, and Joni wonders if she should use the blank check her father left her. She also considers just waiting until Monday for her parents, but Rudy explains that the boiler will completely break down if it isn't fixed soon.
And in this weather, if there's no heat going through these pipes, then the water in this pipe freezes and expands. So, they could burst.
Voice.
And that price tag is around $2,000, so yeah. Bobby comes downstairs to inquire as to whether the lamp he just broke was an antique. And Jenny adds that the baby is crying. Under a lot of stress, Joni goes to get the check. On Monday, Joni discusses the matter with Fonzie and vows that she'll tell her parents herself. Jenny promises to be right there, right by her side, and then flees as soon as Howard and Marion enter. Joni admits what happened, and Howard is peeved that Joni spent $200, and Marion defends her. Howard taught Richie about mechanics, not Joni. He can't get mad at her for not knowing something he never taught her. Howard apologizes for yelling. Fonzie adds that by acting now, Joni saved Howard from having to spend more in the future to fix the boiler.
$200 well spent if Joni hadn't thought fast. Could have cost you $2,000.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd make the right decision.
Then they go upstairs to look at the baby. Also, Fonzie invites Howard back to his apartment later.
I had such a weekend, I can't believe it. 400 luscious teachers, huh?
Oh, boy, I wish I could have seen that.
Meet me up at my apartment, I'll be there in an hour.
Al stops by to ask Howard for the bagels from New York that he asked for. Unfortunately for him, the bag is now empty, and despite Howard claiming to have been robbed, Al realizes Howard ate them and demands to know how they tasted.
Thank you, Peter. That was Baby, It's Cold Inside. It first aired back on December 8th, 1981. Happy Days was followed by a new Laverne and Shirley, in which Laverne moves in with her boyfriend, and Shirley has to keep Frank from finding out. CBS had a new Simon and Simon, in which a computer wizard uses his hacking skills to steal thousands of dollars from a bank. And NBC had a new episode of Father Murphy. This week, Murphy gets 4 of his kids out of a workhouse and finds out why mountain man Eli McQuaid abandoned Drew at the orphanage. So, Peter, of those 3 choices, what are you watching?
I'm watching Simon and Simon. I want to go back to the 80s, where everyone thought that hackers were basically wizards.
I am definitely watching that episode of Simon and Simon. In the 1980s, people thought computers were magic and could do anything.
Whoa, quite exciting. Quite exciting, this computer magic.
So that promises to be a very exciting episode. Father Murphy sounds almost unbearably sad and depressing, so no thank you. Baby, It's Cold Inside was directed by Jerry Paris, and it was written by Cindy Begel and Lisa Kite. They had previously written No Tell Motel in Season 8. As we're guest stars this week, we have Vahan Musikian as Rudy to the rescue. Vahan is a very prolific actor and producer who's been working mostly in television since the late 1970s. His TV acting credits include roles on Heart to Heart, Newhart, Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, and Riptide. He was also in the 1982 movie Frances, starring Jessica Lange. As a producer, he started working on made-for-TV movies and miniseries in the 1970s and 80s before moving on to weekly series like Tour of Duty, The Guardian, The Tick, Rosewood, The Unit, and Lie to Me. He even produced made-for-TV movies about the Menendez brothers and Amy Fisher, The Long Island Lolita. They were the big names of true crime in the 90s other than OJ, so...
Yeah, the 90s were a strange and bad time. Unlike now, which is also a strange and bad time. Never mind.
Well, there was 2 competing Amy Fisher movies, the Drew Barrymore one and the Alyssa Milano one, and Vahan produced the Alyssa Milano one. Yeah,
Yikes.
so...
What are you looking at me for? I'm an old dog. I got a family. I'm all used up.
Oh, no. You're in great shape. I could tell you work out because you have really nice arms.
Peter, what did you think of Vahan Musikian as Rudy to the rescue?
He was pretty fun. I thought he did a good job at balancing being very professional, being very deadpan. He's not like a big, broad, wacky character. He's just a very focused man. He seems like he's probably good at fixing boilers. And I did like the joke where Joni worries about spending $200 to fix the boiler, and he corrects her that it's $199.95, because that's a thing that salespeople will do to make something seem less expensive. If the price is a round number, then it seems more expensive.
Well, you're in luck. Rudy's got a special this weekend. Only $199.95.
$200?
No, $199.95.
I thought Vahan Musikian was great in this episode. I loved everything that he said and did here. I love the moment when he gets lightheaded from hearing that Joni has a blank check.
What's the matter?
I'm sorry, when I hear blank check, the blood rushes to my head. I'll get started.
I also like that he is a competent repairman and not just a total sleazeball huckster who's lying to Joni. As for songs this week, all we get is The Locomotion by Little Eva. We've been hearing that all season. As for cultural and historical references, this episode takes its title from the 1944 song Baby It's Cold Outside, written by Frank Lesser. Air Greenland is real, and it has a fleet of aircraft, including planes and helicopters, to provide service to and from Greenland, as well as to most of the major villages within the island, but it would have been relatively new at the time of this story, having only been founded in 1960. Back then, it was known as Grunlandsfly. The name didn't get anglicized to Air Greenland until 2002. I think this was a case of the Happy Days writers just guessing and getting it right accidentally, or did they know about Air Greenland?
I think that they were accidentally psychic. This is accidental psychic powers.
Fonzie says, I figure I'd put a little Dewey back in their decimal system.
96% of all the delegates were ladies.
So I figured I'd put a little Dewey back in their decimal system.
He's referring to a system for organizing books in a library. The Dewey Decimal Classification, or DDC, was created by American librarian Melville Dewey in 1876. Dewey was a founding member of the American Library Association, but he had to resign in disgrace amid numerous scandals in 1905.
Yeah, library history can get pretty wild.
Joni says she's going to go upstairs and play with her Barbie dolls. Mattel did not introduce its famous fashion doll until 1959, so Joni probably would have been too old for these toys even when they debuted.
Barbie dressed for swim and fun is only $3. Her lovely fashions range from $1 to $5. Look for Barbie wherever dolls are sold.
Ruth Handler based the design on a German doll called Lily and named her Barbie after her own daughter. And Fonzie says that Joan of Arc saved France when she was Joni's age. This is more or less true. Jeanne d'Arc was a French peasant girl of the 15th century who claimed to receive divine guidance from St. Catherine, St. Margaret, and the Archangel Michael. King Charles VII was convinced she was genuine and sent her to inspire the French army during the siege of Orleans by the English in 1429. She was about 17 at the time. Her success on the battlefield went downhill after that, though, and she was later burned at the stake by the English as a heretic.
Joan of Arc with the Lord to guide her. She was a sister who really cooked.
Peter, do you think Joan of Arc was really receiving divine guidance, or do you think she was just mentally ill? What do you think was going on there?
I think that the line between the two is very, very slim. And I also think that, hey, she got the English out of France, even if she was just having hallucinations. They were pretty darn good hallucinations.
She made them work for her. She reminds me a lot of a person we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Ezekiel, the Old Testament prophet who had the vision of the dry bones coming back to life. He got a whole book of the Bible written about him, and some people think he was mentally ill as well. Potsy says it's been 5 years since he and Fonzie hung out. This is a callback to Fonzie's Hero, which indeed was 5 years old by the time of this episode. Does it feel like 5 years have gone by since Fonzie's Hero?
I don't think so, but time is weird on Happy Days.
It literally had been 5 calendar years and a couple of months between these two episodes.
Let's make a deal that we meet every 5 years, all right? I'll treat the game as skeet ball.
Fonzie says he and Potsy will play a game of skee ball. This classic arcade game goes back to 1908 and has been copyrighted since 1928. The company that owns the copyright sued a Brooklyn skee ball league for copyright infringement as recently as 2011, but they settled out of court. Peter, have you ever played any skee ball?
I think so, like years ago. There was a place called Caesarland where I grew up, which was owned and operated by Little Caesars, the pizza company.
I'd like to go to Caesarland. She likes to play.
And there were like play places and games where you could get tickets for prizes and stuff. It closed down many years ago, but skee ball was one of the things. Skee ball was never one of my favorites because I was not very good at it.
I am not very good at skee ball either, but it is one of my favorite things to do at arcades. I just find it satisfying somehow. Usually where you find skee ball, you also find pizza, so to me that's a good night.
I can eat a whole $5 pizza with my Social Security check.
Bernie's Bakery is fictional, but some of the New York locations mentioned in this episode are real. Al tells Howard to take the D train to Jerome, then take the 44 bus, get off at Morris, and walk 6 blocks west. As far as I can tell, these directions are not followable in the real world. The D train is a famous New York subway service that runs from 205th Street in the Bronx all the way down through Manhattan and down to Coney Island in Brooklyn. Biz Markie, Bob Dylan, and the Beastie Boys have all mentioned the D train in their songs, and the gang from Seinfeld even took it to Coney Island in the episode The Subway. The D train does not stop at Jerome Avenue, which is in the Bronx, but it does come near Jerome. There also is no 44 bus in the Bronx. Cartoonist Joe Dater told me via Twitter that he thought Morris referred to Morris Park, which is a neighborhood in the Bronx, but is not near Jerome or the D train. There's also a Morris Avenue in the Bronx. Perhaps Al was referring to that. One of the partygoers brings a bag of Rolled Gold pretzels, and you can see the logo as it looked in the early 1980s. Rolled Gold was actually started by a Philadelphia businessman named Lorraine Shoemaker in 1917. In 1961, around the time of this story, Rolled Gold was purchased by Frito-Lay.
People think that pretzels are all the same, but to me, there's nothing like the taste of Rolled Gold.
Peter, you like some Rolled Gold?
I'll eat them if they're available. I'm not usually a pretzel person, but I'll eat anything.
Chachi says he gave the boiler its last rites.
Did you fix the boiler?
Fix it? Are you kidding? I just gave that thing its last rites. Yeah, let's go to the shop.
also known as the Commendation of the Dying. These are the final prayers given to a Christian who is near death. They cannot be administered to someone who has already died, but they can be given to someone who is awaiting execution, terminally ill, or mortally injured. Eugene says her lips say no, no, but her eyes say yes, yes. So I guess both Belvins have problems understanding consent?
Yeah.
There really was a song called There's Yes, Yes in Your Eyes. It was written by Cliff Friend and Joseph Santley. It was first recorded in 1924 by the Oriole Orchestra. It's since been covered by Paul Whiteman, Tony Pastor, Dean Martin, and more. The lyrics say,
Your lips tell me no, no, but there's yes, yes in your eyes.
Which is a horrible sentiment and a horrible thing to express in a song.
Yep.
Rudy points to the name on his uniform and says, what does that say, Liberace? We've talked about flamboyant American pianist Vuaju Liberace, or Walter Liberace, before, but I don't think we've mentioned that he was from West Allis, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee, so he would have been a local hero to the characters on Happy Days.
Nice.
They make a lot of Liberace jokes on Happy Days. Do you think that's why? It's because they're especially attuned to Liberace because he's a local celebrity?
Possibly. I think it might also just be because Liberace is very associated with the mid-20th century. Happy Days is gradually getting less and less interested in reflecting the time period it supposedly takes place in, but it tries sometimes.
A little. They'll give us a reference to something 50s or 60s every once in a while. Rudy charges $199.95 to fix the boiler. Adjusting for inflation, that's between $1,900 and $2,000 in today's money. You can basically take all the prices in this episode and multiply them by 10. So Joni spends $2,000 to save her parents from spending $20,000. Rudy says that the boiler has standard Crookshank galvanized pipes. He adds that Crookshank was an idiot. Crookshank is fictional, but galvanized pipes are real. The term galvanized refers to steel that has been covered in a protective layer of zinc to prevent rust. Galvanized pipes were common in homes built before 1960, but they're no longer in use today because they rot from the inside out. Pipes are now made of copper, and plumbers say that older homes should get rid of their galvanized pipes. So thanks to this episode, Peter, I learned a lot about plumbing and pipes.
Good job, Happy Days. You did something educational.
Rudy says that the Cunninghams could be doing Sea Hunt in their basement. Sea Hunt was a syndicated adventure show that ran from 1958 to 1961. It stars Lloyd Bridges as a freelance scuba diver named Mike Nelson, who's often called upon to go on difficult and dangerous underwater missions.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Bridges, inviting you to join us for another action-packed story of underwater adventure 1 week from today.
When Howard and Marion return from New York, Fonzie says, the Happy Wanderers are back. The Happy Wanderers was a popular travelogue show of the 60s and 70s that originated in Los Angeles, but was sent out all over the country.
Oh, may I always laugh and sing beneath God's clear blue sky. Boundary, Baldera, Baldera, Baldera.
Other observations this week. This episode marks the triumphant return of Potsy after an absence of 6 consecutive episodes. I thought Anson Williams might have been busy with some other TV project, but all I can find for him in 1981 is that he and Ron Howard co-produced the made-for-TV movie Skyward Christmas. Peter, did you notice Potsy's absence from the previous episodes?
I did not notice Potsy's absence, but I have to admit, in this episode, he was actually pretty fun. Like, once again, he follows Howard home, and then when it looks like someone else is going to have to stay home from one of their trips to look after the baby, he just immediately volunteers to go instead because he's just that desperate for interaction with someone who won't send him away. It's very sad, but also kind of funny.
I was starting to notice Potsy's absence. I don't know what was happening. Maybe he was ill, or maybe he was on vacation somewhere, or maybe they just couldn't think of anything for him to do 6 weeks in a row. That's got to be a blow to the old ego. Howard's chair is back this week, and Fonzie even jumps into it as usual. It's gone during the party, though. It was nice to get a mention of Ralph in this episode, however brief. Richie gets plenty of mentions on Happy Days, but Ralph has seemingly been forgotten.
I like knowing that Ralph and Potsy still talk sometimes.
And they're not really selling the cold weather that supposedly is happening outside. After all, Howard leaves the house wearing a trench coat rather than a winter coat, and Chachi is in a t-shirt, and he seems fine.
Maybe Howard and Chachi, maybe their blood just runs naturally hot.
I thought it was nice that the Happy Days writers remember that it gets cold in Milwaukee during the winter, but they could have put a little more effort into selling it. This is the first time I think we're seeing the Cunningham's basement, and the set does not disappoint. I'm not sure how you access the basement from upstairs, though. I guess you have to go outside first. Was that your impression as well?
I mean, if you do have to do that, then that's another mark against the episode consistently depicting the cold, seeing as Bobby and Jenny don't seem to be affected by it at all when they go to the basement.
I think this was the week when the writers realized the set doesn't have a door that would lead down to the basement, and the B plot with Al and the bagels was very odd for Happy Days since it borders on sadistic. Poor Al, what a cruel thing to put him through. What did you think, Peter?
He was really looking forward to those bagels. Shame on you, Howard.
So, Peter, were there any outstanding Happy Days fashions in this episode?
Mostly it's the trench coat again.
I noticed a couple of things. First off, Jenny has a very signature look in season 9. She has all these plaid skirts, and then she has matching tops and tights that she will wear over.
Yeah, it kind of makes it look like she's wearing the skirt over some sort of bodysuit, like a leotard with leggings.
It was a unique look. And what did you think of what the Belvins were wearing to the party?
The hats were very Holden Caulfield. I wonder if that was intentional on their parts.
I was thinking Ed Gain. I think he's from he's from Wisconsin, isn't he? So, Peter, did you have any other observations that you wanted to make about Baby It's Cold Inside?
So in this episode, there's a part, as discussed in the summary, where Joni makes Chachi pretend to be her husband because they're alone, there's a baby with them, it's very domestic. At first, he can't really get into it, and he remarks that he got to be on a test, and then when he tries to get more into it, he makes up a backstory where he works in the mines, and he's mad at Joni for staying home all day and eating bonbons and buying new dresses. And I have to wonder where his idea of marriage comes from. He seems to have liked his father, and his mother also seems to have liked his father. Based on the scant information we have, I assume that their marriage was, at the very least, more functional than that. So I have questions.
That just seems like stuff from old cartoons and old sitcoms. Maybe that's what he's drawing on. But it also gave you a glimpse into what Chachi thinks marriage is like, which is bad news for Joni. So, Peter, I will ask that age-old timeless question. Was this episode any good?
It's pretty dull. There's not a ton of exciting stuff in it. There are moments that are funny, but not like laugh out loud funny. And I feel like it could have gone more in depth into Joni having to look after a baby while dealing with the boiler. And I don't think the party aspect really added much to it.
This is as stock simple a sitcom episode as you could get. This could have been any TV show. It didn't even have to be Happy Days. The party is basically a non-starter. All these people show up and then nothing happens. And then Joni is put in charge of this baby and nothing happens there either. It almost feels like this episode was maybe a few rewrites away from being interesting or funny. As it is, it's just very bland and unmemorable. The one thing I will say in its defense is that we are reviewing this a week after reviewing the episode No Thank You, and at least this one did not make me cringe. I didn't have to avert my eyes from the screen at any time while watching this, which I had to do during No Thank You. There was a particular scene in that episode that was so embarrassing that I had to look away. I think you know the scene that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Other than that, this one is very skippable. So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things that we are doing?
Listeners can follow us on Twitter at Fonzie Podcast. They can follow me on Twitter at Peter Volfranc. That's PeterVulfranc.
And they can follow me on Twitter at Joe_A_Blevins. They can find this podcast online at TheseDaysAreOurs.Libsyn.com. And they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at TheseDaysAreOursPodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, what do we have on the docket for next week?
Next week, Joni and Chachi give Eugene Belvin a makeovers to help him win over Jenny in Hello, Tough Guy.
Jesus, Joni and Chachi. Okay. Joni and Chachi one.
Joni and Chachi and Eugene one.
And Eugene one. Oh, God. I do not know how to react to that plot summary, so I will not react at all, other than to say, see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
I'd like to go to Caesarland.